Real quick, we are tweaking the title to these daily news. Used to be called daily financial news. I'm now playing with the idea of daily millionaire news. And yes, before you ask, I am pandering to the YouTube algorithm. I have seen the word millionaire get a lot more play. So welcome to the daily millionaire news. Same story. We're going to look at what's going on in the markets. We're going to look at cost of capital. We're going to look at consumers. We're going to be doing all the same things we were doing in the daily financial news, except tweaking it to daily millionaire news because I'm thinking the YouTube algorithm likes the word millionaire more than financial. That simple. So, off and running. I want to talk about something that I read that. Good morning. How are you? Lewis, how are you? Want to talk about something I saw from Jim Cramer. Jim Cramer, one of those talking heads on TV that, frankly, I think likes to yell at the camera a lot. He had an interesting quote about Kohls. If you remember on this daily news, we talked about Kohls 2 or 3 days ago. Had a horrible holiday season. Has a partnership with Amazon, which you think would help, but they were not able to translate that into business. And to quote Jim Cramer, Kohl's is roadkill, which is interesting because when I looked up their stock, it was still over $40 a share. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. As you've seen on this channel, retail is going through a transformation. Retail will look very different at the end of 2029 than it does at the beginning of 2020. There will be winners and plenty of losers. I do think retail, right? The retail box store fundamentally changes. And check out a couple of videos ago, we talked about what I think is going to happen in that there will be basically how there's house hacking with real estate. I think there's going to be box store hacking for retailers. So go back, take a look at that. That's what I think will happen. We'll see if I'm right in a minute. So next up, looks like Boeing's new CEO starts Monday. The past CEO was kicked out. He didn't get a quote unquote severance, but he still walked away with 60 million bucks. Not really sure why no severance, but got 60 million. Whatever. But you got to feel bad for the new CEO coming in Monday. I am on record as saying they should, do what Tylenol did back in the day. I think it was the 80s where they took all the Tylenol off the shelf, suffered a big hit because somebody had tampered with their bottles, but they took them all off the market and then replenished. Huge brand boost. I think Boeing probably should do the same thing with the 737 MAX. Some of those quotes that I have been seeing are terrible. It's got to be the employees of Boeing are suffering, right? They probably feel depressed, stressed, and they may have had nothing to do with the 737 Max, but they need to be motivated, and there's nothing more than a rallying cry to get everybody behind something, and maybe they need to take a big bold move and cancel the 737 Max. It will be a billions of dollars of hit, but I think that keeps the company. I really do think if what we've seen recently with these headlines, I think could take the company out. So we'll see. I know lots of people disagree. There's hundreds of thousands of employees and billions of dollars in sales and parts and all of that, but I don't. There's blood in the water, and there's frankly lots of blood in the water, and the sharks are out. So we're going to see what happens with Boeing over the next 6 months or so. Another thing with the millionaire news is obviously the stock market is richly valued, right? The price to earnings multiple, when you look across the S&P, is right up against the peak value of almost 19. I think it's 18.6 or point 0.7. Why that's important is historically speaking, at some point, earnings growth has to be part of the equation. So this will be an interesting earnings season. Just talking about that, I don't know if you saw this, but Six Flags got a rare double downgrade from the same analyst in the same day. That's tough to do, right? So we'll talk about that next. But the reason we're talking about Six Flags here is because our job as investors is to try to figure out what indicators may lead to others. And the reason I tracked Six Flags is because I'm interested in consumers, right? This channel is about real estate. Who buys most real estate? Owner occupants, and owner occupants are consumers. That's why I track all this stuff every day because I'm looking for those little tea leaves. But Six Flags announced just had a bad report, right? People expected their partnership in China, which is with Riverside Investment Group, to be a problem because they're basically China real estate is in trouble, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But they also indicated they had lower season ticket sales. That's interesting to me because if you remember Disney, I guess it was 90 days ago on these daily videos, had a pretty decent number for their theme parks. But now Six Flags is reporting a down season. So I'm curious, is this just unique to Six Flags? Are we seeing a consumer change? Is Disney getting a boost because of all their themed rides tied to movies franchises? I don't know. But it is interesting that a theme park as big as Six Flags in the US, when the consumer is strong, when consumers want to go get memories and take pictures and social media, you think it would be doing well, but it's not. So my job is to try to figure out, is this a consumer signal or is it a just a bad run company, right? Is it just unique to that company? So that'll be interesting. But back to Riverside Investment Group, it's interesting that in Six Flags filing, they highlighted a China partnership that was doing bad because of their changing real estate market, right? Their demand for real estate. So if you kind of try to, put those, those things together, we've often thought that the Chinese real estate market is kind of inflated, lots of sticks and bricks with nobody living in them. I think we're starting to see signs of that. Don't know what that means for the bigger picture, but again, it's one of those things you've got to keep watching because if they got to be bailed out or do whatever, it could have impacts globally. I think it will probably be maintained in China, but again, it's something to watch, right? So that will be interesting. Six Flags, got that. I'm just checking off all my notes. Next up, you remember Xerox and HP? We talked about this 60 days ago, 75 days ago, when Xerox, the smaller player, came out and offered to buy HP. HP basically said, ha ha ha, no thanks. Xerox came back with a threat that said, hey, we're going to take this, I forget what the dollar amount was, but some richly valued stock number just directly to the public. At that time, I actually guessed that HP was probably sitting behind their ivory tower going, how can we buy Xerox? I don't know what's going on, right? I haven't seen any update from Xerox. I haven't seen them, go to their stock base and look to buy HP stock. I still have to assume, if this is valid, that HP is actively looking to buy Xerox. Again, I don't know anything, but it just seems to have gone quiet when you don't think it should have, because again, the smaller player was being aggressive on the bigger one. So, we shall see. And the reason I bring that one up is I expect leverage buyouts to become more popular. Debt is cheap. Companies are releasing more or going to the debt market more and more. There was actually a record this last week with how much debt was put on the market. And people are going to be looking with this richly valued stocks to buy growth, or at least tell the story of buying growth. So I expect this to be interesting. I expect cost of capital to remain cheap. This is important for me as a real estate investor because it allows me to plan out the year. I expect the Fed to be not involved up or down. I expect rates to kind of be where they are, plus or minus 15 or 20 basis points, which really means it's going to be a good year to buy. We are seeing a reduced inventory, which I talked about yesterday. If you haven't seen that one, it's basically my prediction that single family homes are going to be a good investment this year. We are getting ready to kick off earnings season. I don't remember a time where earnings season was more important. Again, going back to almost a 19 PE, price to earnings ratio for the S&P. It's going to get interesting, right? We need the companies that are reporting, especially early, are going to set the tone. So we're going to see if the stock market is going to be, it's going to hold tight, or we are going to see up or down. And then the last thing to just talk about is, I don't know if you saw this, but Iran admitted to downing that plane. I actually, on my one evening news, guessed that's what happened because I said timing. I don't believe in coincidences, and unfortunately, a tragic accident caused the loss of life of nearly 200 individuals, which is horrible. But now it looks like um, the people from Iran are protesting and demanding that their leaders step down. I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't get the feeling that the leaders in Iran have any interest in stepping down. So it'll be interesting. You know, is this a one-day flare-up? Does this become something bigger? Does it morph into a Tiananmen Square, except in Iran? Right? It'll be something to watch. Um, I don't expect it to be market moving, but it could balloon into something. And it also could just die out and fizzle and, not be news. But it will be something I will be watching to see if we see if this just snuffs out like a one day activity or if it becomes something bigger. Does it become Hong Kong, where it just stretches out weeks on weeks on weeks? So it'll be interesting. In the end, it's going to be an exciting week. We also have the trade deal signing, supposed to be on the 15th, I believe, which I have is Wednesday. It'll be interesting to see what's in there. It'll be interesting to see who shows up, the pictures, the media, all of that. It'll be interesting to see what they talk about. This is phase one. When is phase two? Lots of stuff, as always, going on with these daily millionaire news that you need to watch and be a hold of. We will talk to you tomorrow. Just a heads up, I just completed an interview this morning with the gentleman who started his real estate business with $63. That should be up in a couple of hours. And of course, it is Sunday, and I need to report back to you how I'm doing on my goals. So look for that video later in the day. All right, Daily Millionaire News tomorrow. Take care. Bye.